Let's get this started, everybody. Welcome. Today is the first Thursday of the month. It is the 4th of September, and today is our beginner camera class, our camera basics. Now, welcome in, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Saxon. I teach the camera classes here every month. We do these every week on Thursdays from 5:30 to 7. Try to offer a little bit to everybody so that way we can all learn about cameras in our own way. We started teaching this class maybe about 3 years ago. So again, if you've seen this before, you've been here, you probably already are aware of this class. You probably already have taken this before. Nothing's changed since then. But for anybody brand new, welcome. These classes are free. They're meant to try to help you learn how to take photos better, but really it's just meant to help you and teach you photography in a better way. Camera basics, really what we're relying on today is the most simple and rudimentary understandings of photography and photo taking. We're not here to look at how to do manual control or understand more complex measures of photography and how we shoot. No, what we're trying to get here is more of a basic understanding of how the camera works, what we should be expecting, and my most important note for today, the automatic setting. I want to ingrain that in your heads for you before you're done with this class. Let's start from the very beginning and we'll go through everything. So, where to go when all else fails? I'm a resource. I'm here every day except for Tuesdays and Wednesdays. I do work on the sales floor here at App, so there are a lot of times where myself or other colleagues that I trust are busy. So it's important that you know where you can go when you need resources and when you need help with your new camera products or with your old products. Owner's manual is always recommended, and it's kind of a fail-safe. It's the traditional. Imaging Resource is a fantastic website where you can look up all sorts of camera information and questions you might have. On top of that, too, there's a podcast that you can listen to as well. That's really helpful. They also have on the Canon, Nikon, and Sony website tools and pieces of literature and information for you to help you realize what you're doing, how the camera functions, what you should know about while you're using it. It's really cool, the interactive websites. Nikon is one of my personal favorites. They have a great website to look at. YouTube is then also my final and my favorite resource that's out there. Guys, you're watching my class on YouTube. If you're here, there's nothing that you can do that you can't do that YouTube doesn't have a tutorial walkthrough video of. So if you're buying a brand new camera, I would look up 10 things you didn't know about whatever your camera model is and see what people are making videos of and what they have out there. So there's 3 main types of cameras that we're really going to be talking about. The main 2 are going to be the DSLR and the mirrorless. But in the triage, or in the 3 styles of cameras that we have, it is the DSLR, the mirrorless, and the point and shoot and bridge camera. Point and shoot and bridge cameras are still excellent cameras, but they are considered a point and shoot or a bridge because the lens is built in and cannot be removed. Whereas DSLRs and mirrorless have the interchangeable lens system. There are differences, though. You'll hear a lot of old photographers and people who've been doing this for years who have what's called DSLRs, digital single lens reflexes. Then you're going to have people who have the new mirrorless technology, and there are going to be debates, and there have been debates back and forth for a while on which one's better. I will say that mirrorless is the best out of the 2, and it's the most advanced and futuristic. So you definitely are going to see less and less of this comparison. But it's important that as a new photographer, as someone who's getting into this, you should know. A DSLR has a mirror on the inside. When it's used, that's how it then hits the image to the sensor of the camera and then also brings the image up to your viewfinder so you can see through it and see what you're looking at. Mirrorless has no mirror on the inside, hence the name. Mirrorless cameras are lighter weight, they're smaller, they're more compact and portable than their DSLR brethren. So depending on where you're at right now, you might want to upgrade into something that is a DSLR camera or a mirrorless camera if you're shooting on an older DSLR. Now, if your camera's working just fine, newer and newer models of mirrorless are constantly coming out. You might want to sit on that until your DSLR finally does bite the dust, and then upgrade to get the newest technology available when that time comes. Memory cards. This is what's saving your photos. Your camera, when you purchased it, or when you purchase it, will not come with any memory storage or anything that is available for you to then make to save videos on. You need to purchase an SD card in order to then use it. And I always recommend having 2 of these because they're very small, fragile items that can break very easily. So it's important that you keep one extra one inside your bag. I'd also recommend at this time too carrying an extra battery too. Extra batteries and extra memory cards go a long way. If something were to happen to one of them, you have a backup to get to those files. Now, your picture should never live on your memory card. I like to joke and say that the memory card is like your car. If your computer and your camera is your work and your home, the SD card or your car is meant to drive between the 2 of them. It's never meant for you to live in it or for everything to stay on there. It's meant for you to transport them from one place to the other. Once they're downloaded and everything's gone through, then it's okay to delete the photos from the card and continuously reuse them. Now, these are my step-by-steps that I use when I'm saving photos that I would recommend to you. First, start by turning off your camera and wait at least 5 seconds. At this time, you should remove the card and place that into a reader. And I always recommend to try to avoid using your camera to transfer photos to your device, only because the quality can become diminished. Accidents could happen. You could accidentally drop your camera while this is going on. It's much easier to remove the card, insert it into the computer, and keep things decluttered, simple, and easy on your counter space or on your desk space. And card readers are readily available. There are a lot of different brands out there. There's a lot of different companies that make these. Find one that's appropriate for you and your setup at home. But I would absolutely recommend having one of these at home. So the next step in my process is to copy photos to a destination folder. And you don't want to move them physically. You want to click all the photos that you want to then put over to the onto the computer. You're going to copy and paste them. Why? If something were to become interrupted during the transfer of a copy versus you actually moving them from one place to the other, if it became interrupted for any reason, your photos would still be on the SD card, but if they're in the middle of transferring from one to the other because they're moved, it might not. So it's an important thing to think about. From there, if you're using Windows, you're using Explorer, and if you're using Mac, you're using Finder when you make this folder on your computer. Now, the folder can be labeled whatever you'd like it to be. I would highly recommend labeling it something that fits within the event that you just took pictures of. If I went to my kid's T-ball game, I might say Sammy's T-ball game 9/4/2025 Cubs vs. Rays, and then all the photos would be in there. And I like adding multiple things to my folders because what if I forgot one part of it? Maybe I couldn't think of which kid I had that played in the game, but I could remember that he played on the Cubs that year, so let me look that up. Maybe I don't remember what game it was, but I remember that he played on the 4th of September. I can look that date up. There's a lot of ways that I can backtrack to find this if I need to in the future. So I'm very particular about labeling my folders and making sure that I label them correctly so that way future me can find those photos. Once we've done all that, let's copy them to a secondary place. I'd recommend an external hard drive or some form of cloud-based solution like Prime Photos or Google Drive. Now next, eject the card before physically removing it. You want to make sure that you actually go to the left side or right corner of your computer and eject the card properly. And then you should format it into the card. Formatting will erase all the old info on the card. It'll also prime the card so it's ready for your camera. But if you've already done this process a bunch, you can simply just delete everything while it's on the computer. And technically that card is still optimized for your camera. Here's a little visual representation of your backup plan. I like the photos on there. I think it sells it really well. It starts with that SD card. Once you move from the SD card, you're going to transfer everything to your computer. Again, we're going to copy things. We're not going to move them so we don't lose it. From there, we are then going to make sure that we have a hard drive that we can either store these photos on, or let's try a cloud-based solution. A lot of good options out there. Would highly recommend it. If you are someone who's interested in editing your photos or your videos, Adobe Creative Cloud might be a great option. If you're using Gmail for email or Microsoft Outlook for email, you might want to look at OneDrive too. There's a whole bunch of different options that you have on there. But again, if you're someone who doesn't like hard drives and doesn't want clutter, then this might be a great option for you, because then you can still access all your photos, but you won't have to dig through hard drives. Now let's go through a tour of your camera. This is typically the longer part of the class. We'll talk a little bit about lenses after this as well too. But this is the meat and potatoes that I like to always bring up. Here we're going to go through each button. I'm going to talk about what it does a little bit, and if anyone has any questions, you can chat in whenever. So let's start with the top of your camera. The other thing I will note with this, guys, is that you might notice that your camera doesn't have these buttons in the exact same location, or it doesn't have the buttons at all. And I will say this, all cameras are almost identical, or in the sense of at least their buttons and their functionality. The issue that camera, or not the issue, but where you see cameras different is when you see that cameras have different features or different programs that they offer based on the brand. Nikon will offer things that are different than Sony. Sony will offer things that are different from Canon, but all three of them do the same thing, just take photos or video. So again, keep that in mind when you're looking. There's a red dot or a red circle on your camera. That's called your video start and stop. You then also have a power switch that will be where you turn your camera on and off from. From there, then you're also going to have your shutter release, your exposure compensation, your mode dial, the live view switch, and the command dial. Live view can also be labeled as display. They do similar things. They switch your display on your screen so that way you can see it in a different view, or it switches so you can only see it in the viewfinder. If ever your screen doesn't look the way you want it to, hit the display or live view button a few times and it should shuffle through the different screens. From there, then, you also have your mode dial. Your mode dial is what then dictates what your camera is doing. It's like your gear shift in your car. That's where you can switch between your drive, your neutral, your park, all of the different features, all through the command dial, through the mode dial. The command dial then controls those different features. So if you're looking at something like, your aperture priority or shutter priority, the command dial, as you turn and tweak, is going to then allow you to change those numbers up. And then lastly, we have the exposure compensation, which the exposure compensation is what helps you lower or make your photo darker or lighter based on the exposure of the image. Now, I wanted to say in the beginning, and I did say it with the automatic settings, how much I'm going to try to beat that into your heads today, and I strongly, strongly stay on that. Automatic is definitely the way to go with this camera, with your camera. The reason being is that even the most experienced photographers need time to adjust and learn their camera. And if you're buying this because your kids are graduating or it's their big game on Friday night at high school and you want to go take photos, that's great. But if you're brand new and you're just starting, you're going to take not great photos if you do them in the manual controls and it's your first time with the camera. Let the camera do the heavy lifting for you. Stick to automatic. I know it seems silly or kind of counterintuitive because you have this camera that can do all the things that it does. But I think it's important that when you start with that automatic setting, it allows for you to just get familiarized with the product, learn the kind of layout of it, and then from there be able to manually control it as you become more experienced and knowledgeable in it. So start with the automatic, that's where I would start with it, and then from there we can progress into the manual controls. And we'll be looking more at those manual controls next week during intermediate cameras. Now, another thing to know about the mode dials is that while it is what controls your camera's action or function, it also can look different on all the brands. And I have all three of these images to show you how designs and things can be different. But again, the mode dial is still what's driving your camera, what's allowing for you to switch between the different controls. What those important controls are going to look like are these. So auto or A+, it might be a green camera, it might say IA for intelligent auto, there's all sorts of different things that it can do, but that is auto control over the settings and functions. M is full manual control. A or AV is your aperture priority, which we'll talk more about next week. And S or TV is shutter priority, which again we'll talk a little bit more about next week. When you feel like you've graduated from automatic and you're feeling more confident, you should try program automatic or program. That allows for you to let the camera do all of the things it wants to do. All you have to do is point and take a pretty photo, much like automatic. But now if you want to change things like focus parameters, ISO, if you want to bump up your exposure compensation or lower your exposure compensation, white balance, focal points, focal sight or view finding, you've got all these things that you can play with within program that you couldn't do with automatic. But now, or with that, the camera's still doing all the work for you. You're just controlling more of the color and saturation and overall exposure aspects of the photo. Now B is an old one, but you still might see it, that's bold. That basically means that the camera's fully customizable, but as long as you're holding the shutter or until you click it again, that shutter is going to stay open the whole time. We use that for long exposure photography, which I won't get into, but if it is something you're interested in, I'd highly recommend watching some videos on how to do it, so that way you can get really amazing photos, especially of nature or stars or planets. Those are really fun. Now there's also the scenes on there. Scenes are also automatic modes. What to know about scenes is that camera companies basically made scenes so that way if you were someone who wanted to shoot automatically, but you wanted to specify what you were shooting. Maybe you were doing nighttime or outdoor photography, so you'd move to the setting for nighttime. Maybe you were doing action or sports, so you'd move to the little running guy. Maybe you were doing portraits, so you'd move the symbol up to the head. Again, these were there to make it so that way it simplified the shooting experience. However, though, scenes died out pretty quickly. You won't see them on many cameras anymore. Some cameras do have them, the entry-level products, but I would highly recommend just stick to automatic if you're going to do this. Scenes don't necessarily do any better than automatic does. Yes, you're telling your camera what you're about to do, but in reality, is that actually helping you get the shot that you need with the proper settings? It might not. On the side of your camera, we're going to see maybe a flash button. Older models might have this, entry models might have this, but most mirrorless will not because there's no need for a flash. And if you do need a flash, you probably want a powerful flash. You've got a function button. These act as multi-purpose random buttons. You can set the function buttons to really be whatever you want them to be. From there, then we have the zoom ring, which will then zoom our lens in and out as long as we have a telephoto lens. We have a focus ring on there. If we're not using automatic focus, this lets us manually focus. We have a lens retract button if you have a lens that requires a button for you to open and close or telescope the lens in and out. The lens release button is on the side. Hold that button and then turn your lens clockwise. That should remove it from its mount. Put the lens back on. Usually there's some symbols that you match up. and then you're going to push those two back together, or turn again the other direction, counterclockwise, and then that will then lock the lenses into place, or the lens and the ring onto place. And then we have the drive mode button. Drive mode is what dictates if you're doing burst photography, or you doing a timer, or whatever you're choosing to do. If it's a single photo, that's where that gets done. On the back of your camera, you should have a menu button that'll take you into the internal menus of the camera, so that way you're able to change certain things. Diopter adjustment, if you're a 4-eyes person like myself, this gives you the ability to see clearly through the viewfinder based on your prescription. The info button, clicking on this usually will give you information either about the photo or about the settings that you're using. Most cameras don't have that, and typically what you can then do nowadays is just scroll through. Usually if you hit like the I button or a different button on the camera, which it'll label in the bottom corner when you have this open, that'll then give you the stats or the information. You might be asking, what do you mean by stats? This will tell you things like your white balance, show you a histogram, it'll tell you what f-stop, what shutter, what ISO you used, where you took the photo, what time you took the photo. There's a bunch of things that the info button can tell you that might be pertinent to when you need that information. Exposure or focus lock, that's the same idea as if you click the half trigger and you hold it halfway down. You focus the camera before you squeeze. You can also back focus as well too and hold your thumb on that button instead. You have the image playback button. The I button, the FN button, and some cameras even have a Q button, all act as the same thing. They're a multifunctional, quick way for you to get through certain shortcuts, if you will. And they're very easy to use and they're fun. Like for example, in Nikon, if you press the I button, that gives you the ability to go in and change things like your focus parameters, your target recognition, your white balance, all that stuff. Now you have the multi-selector and the OK button on there, also pretty explanatory. Demagnify and magnify is to zoom in and out. And then the trash if you need to throw photos away. I will say throwing photos away on the camera is kind of silly. It takes a lot of battery to do so. Deleting a photo takes about as much battery as saving a photo and taking the photo. So I would think about it and just delete everything at home if I were you. Save yourself the hassle of going through and deleting on the camera itself. This is one of my favorite pictures ever. A customer sent this to me, and her quote to me was, "My camera doesn't work." I had a little bit of a chuckle. She came into the store and we talked a little bit about it. I get customers who do have this feeling all the time. They buy a camera, they go to use it, and they get photos that look like this. And the answer is simple, but it's also a little not simple. I strongly recommend to every new beginner photographer, do not use the manual controls. This is what happened in that photo. She went out for drinks with her friends, took the photo, and it came out blurry like this. And it was because she was on that manual control and she thought she knew what she was doing, but she didn't. It's not hard to learn the manual control, but it takes time. It takes practice and it takes effort on your end to actually sit there and understand what your camera is doing to achieve what you're achieving. So it's not just as simple as, you know, this setting is always going to work for this setting. It's not always like that. Sometimes you kind of have to move and bump and grind a little bit until you figure out exactly what the settings I need for what I'm shooting. So yeah, this is one of those situations we showed about automatic mode, and how to use that, and how to just use the camera in general, and eventually it worked out. She's been shooting with it for ever since, and that was a few years ago that this all happened. So keep that in mind, guys. It doesn't happen overnight. It'll happen with practice, but you have to take the time. Start with the automatic settings, learn and become comfortable with that, and then start to upgrade and move into more of the manual controls. Your camera isn't a smartphone. It kind of goes without saying, but I feel like some of you might not understand what I mean by that. The phones are made and built to be very intuitive. They're meant to be easy to use and deliver instant gratification, especially with photos. Phone or cameras aren't necessarily like that. Cameras will give you good gratification based on the photo when you look at the results later, but there are manual controls that will take your photo and make it even better, that once you learn them and you practice them, it'll make a huge difference, but it takes that extra bit of time in order to get there. Eventually, your phone should not even be a thought in your head compared to your camera, because you're so familiar with your camera, you can actually operate it faster. You can operate your phone. That's what you want to become, symbiotic with your product. This one's simple. I won't bore you with this, but camera etiquette. Holding your camera properly. Have good support underneath the camera. One hand on the side grip, one hand under the lens or the body itself. Keep your arms to your sides as well. Don't push them up so that no one can bump into you or your camera doesn't get knocked out of your hands. And keep your back straight as best as you can. It goes a long way. It'll hurt less the next day, especially if you're lugging stuff around, if you're going on vacation, that sort of thing. Focus, then shoot, and shoot through the picture. Remember that you're not just looking at one or two little spots in this image that you're taking, you're looking at the whole scene. So it's important that you take the time, you focus through on everything, and then pull that trigger when you're fully aware of what you're doing. If you or the camera are moving, you will get blurry photos. It's the simplest fact. Try to stay as still as possible. If you have shakes or you don't feel comfortable holding your camera, maybe look into a monopod or a tripod. Great resources, great options to have while you're shooting. Date your body, marry your glass. Your camera body is going to give you 10 good years. I'd say 10 years is what you'll see out of the camera body before it starts to bite the dust. And that can look a little different in a lot of ways. That could mean the camera basically won't turn on anymore. That could mean light leak. That could mean that it slows down. Maybe the buttons are falling off. There's a lot of things that could kill a camera within 10 years. But if you're using it properly and you're using the camera in an efficient way, then yeah, I'd say good 10 years. But what won't break is your lenses, your glass. Your glass is very important. It's very special. The better glass you invest in, the better and the longer it'll last. The cheaper the glass, the worse the image quality, and the features that you're not getting out of there could be tremendous based on the quality of the glass. Now, with lenses, it's important to understand that focal length, when we refer to focal length, the millimeter size, it does refer or relate to zoom. Scientists and engineers years and years and years ago figured out what focal length it was. They went by the millimeters on there. Now, does it actually measure out to millimeters? No. Do I actually know where the math comes from to give us those numbers? No. But what I can tell you is that the higher the number, the larger the number, the tighter our view is. The smaller the number is, the wider our angle is. And you can see the drastic difference between 70 as you zoom into 400. It's important to remember, though, that as you're bringing the birds in, which is what you're shooting, you are going to not only bring the birds in, but bring everything closer to you. This can cause things to look a little weird, or as we like to call it, distorted or compressed. Certain areas of your photo will start to feel flat or washed out based on the lenses you're using, if not used in an appropriate setting for where those lenses should be. And this is a great example. We have this kid or man who we're taking photos of, and with this you can see that at the smaller numbers his head is very needle, pointy, straightforward. It doesn't look right. But at the 100, 400, or the 400 range on here, 200 range, 200 range, you can see how big and puffy his face becomes from that. Choosing a lens that's in the middle, something in the 50, 35, 85 range, are considered perfect for portraits. Whereas something that has this much zoom to it probably would be for distance, for birds, for nature. So remember that focal length and zoom are the same. Focal length, the number relates to how tight or wide our viewing angle is. Beware of that and choosing the right lens for the situation you're shooting in so you don't have to deal with things like compression. Here are a list of some common lenses that you might see on the market, and then I will give you my 3 that I think you should get. Start with your kit lens. It's a great lens. When you first get the kit lens, it's an entry-level lens for a reason. It's really meant to just get you started. I highly recommend that if you're brand new to photography and you're coming in to buy a camera from myself or anyone, strongly would recommend buy the one with the kit lens. What I like about the kit lens is that it gives you a chance, the user, to discover what it is you like. I get a lot of people that come in that say they want to take photos of the family, of the kids, and then eventually before they know it, they're now taking photos, then it's part of their job. It's one thing to say, I'm going to do this, this, and that, but then it's another thing to realize that, wow, I think I'm actually more into taking photos of this, but my lens is not made for that. What do I do? Starting with a kit lens is a great way for you to figure out what it is you want to take photos of. Once you start to figure that out and you're narrowing it in, then you can start to upgrade and get lenses that matter for you. 2 of the most popular styles of lenses are going to be the Nifty 50 or the prime lens. Prime lenses are one singular number, 50 millimeters, 35 millimeters, 14 millimeters, 85. Those are all examples of primes. Primes have the best aperture you can get. We're going to call it maximum aperture. Maximum aperture on something like this is a 1.4. We'll talk more about aperture next week, but it's very important for letting light in and your ability to focus in on your subject. With that being said, this is a very high-class lens because of the 1.4. The 50 millimeter makes it a great portrait lens, and this, if you add it into your collection, would be an excellent lens for those everyday portrait shoots or for those family photos that you want to get at the holidays, that sort of thing. And when a little bit extra oomph is needed, there are telephoto/zoom lenses also on the market. Telephoto lenses or zoom lenses. Telephoto gets its name because it's telescopic, it's tele. And with that, we have the kind of telescope-looking lenses that are going to come in and out. Now, 24 to 70, 70 to 200 are the 2 images you have there. Very popular lenses. 24 to 70, like I talked about earlier with millimeter size, is a smaller millimeter size, which basically means you get more of a wide-angled portrait with a lens like that. Whereas 70 to 200, that's great for your distance. You've got the birds, the gazelles, something's in the background that you want to get the shot of, but you can't get too close because you startle. Well, that's where you need the big lens that can zoom out or in order to help you find that kind of thing. Now, with zoom lenses, they're heavy, they're bulkier compared to the prime lenses. But on top of that too, they also have a maximum aperture of 2.8, which is lower, not as good as the prime lenses. Why does that matter? Because there is a debate between prime and zoom. Some people swear by primes. Some people only like to use zoom, don't need a prime. Other people have both. I have both personally. It really is up to you, the shooter. You got to be comfortable with using the gear that you own and the weight of the gear. I think that's the biggest killer, is the weight. But a prime lens weighs less, has a better aperture, but it's only 1 millimeter size, so you can't zoom. You got to physically move yourself back and forth. Zoom lenses or telephoto lenses, heavy. More flexibility, you don't have to zoom in and out. You don't have to move around as much, you got to zoom in and out. And the aperture isn't as good, but it's still very good. This is the kind of thing that you're going to think about when you're trading off between what lenses to bring for what when you're shooting. And last but not least, the travel lens. One of my personal favorites. Travel lens is super simple. It's meant to be an all-in-one, all-purpose lens. Something that you can take with you to vacation, something that you can use to take regular photos without having to buy a big lens. A lot of people like this because it's simple. The quality is not that good. It is a 3.5 to 5.6 on the aperture side, so it's variable. So it just doesn't take a clean photo in the nighttime, but it still is going to take a good photo. It's great, especially if you're going out of the country and you have weight restrictions or limits to your gear. Now, what lenses do you need? And I put the need in quotations because photography is a want. It is not a need. However, when we want something, we really want something. So, a need in this case, if I had to tell you buy 3 lenses, if you came into my store today and wanted to get 3 lenses to set you up with everything that you might need, I would tell you the Trinity. The Nifty 50, the 50mm prime is one of the best lenses to buy. Simplest lens, been around forever, but it takes a very good portrait. 24 to 70 is the ultimate street walking, lens for vacations or walking through downtown Chicago or going out of town. If you're not necessarily in nature and you're more landscape portraits kind of person, 24 to 70 is great. If you're in that same ballpark but you need more zoom, you're in nature, you're a wildlife liker, you might want to do the 70 to 200 then. But if you could own all 3 of these lenses, you'd be set for life of photography because of the features and what these things can do. Use your timer and your camera app. They exist for a reason. Try downloading all the apps. They're finicky, and I will be honest with you today about that. Even today I had a lady who came in and she was having problems with her Nikon app. And it's always a bummer to me that I have to sometimes tell people, well, unfortunately that is just kind of the way that it is. These apps can be a little bit finicky, like I said. Typically if you delete, reconnect, and just try again, it'll go through. But yes. And then lastly, let's talk a little bit about content creation. More and more is it becoming popular that you, a business owner, you, someone who's starting a company or starting something up, you don't have the money to necessarily hire a photographer to come out and take photos of your food, your product, your business, or whatever it is. Instead, these cameras have become more and more increasingly popular and easy to use, so that way you, the photographer, have the power to do all that yourself. No more waiting around and letting someone else do this for you. This is about you being able to make your own content for you, saving yourself a buck, and then also utilizing your camera equipment to do something really amazing. So when you're doing that, things to keep in mind, whether this is content for social media, for YouTube, you're putting this together because it's going to air for a real commercial, this is what you need to know. Video quality's got to be on, you need to focus on video quality, stabilization, lighting, and mics. We'll talk more about this in the advanced class, but with video quality, proper lenses, proper camera body, stabilization, do we need tripods, gimbals, lighting, what's our lighting situation, on-camera lighting, studio lighting, neutral lighting, natural lighting, what are we looking for? And then microphones, of course, for the sound. Easy ways to get into it, a lot of these camera companies make kits. Buy a kit, it comes with all the extra pieces in there for you to start using. Here's my recommended accessories. I tell everybody, focus on the top 5. That's the things I think you need right away when you're buying one of these. Get yourself a bag, an extra battery, an extra memory card, and a lens cleaning kit. And then if you have more money to spend or anything else, buy yourself that extra strap. If you need it, the strap they usually give isn't padded or comfy. I would then look at tripods, external hard drives, filters if you need stuff for your camera, additional lenses, and then classes and workshops are always great. The bitterness of poor quality remains long after the sweetness of a low price is forgotten. I love this quote. I live by this quote. I think this is a good one. Why? Because a lot of us, I think, get caught up in the fact that we're getting a deal or we're saving some money, and we don't think of the bigger picture. Is the product that we're looking at actually going to deliver us the results that we're looking after? Am I buying this because I can't afford the other one, or because maybe I can't find the other one? Am I doing this to fill the gap of whatever product it is that I need? If you answer yes to any of those questions with it, then you probably should not be buying this. And I would recommend and remind you that, to remember that that poor quality of your purchase will always still be there even after your shopping or your purchase is over. In the camera world, it's very difficult because the better or the more money you spend, the better equipment you get. And the proof is in the actual hardware and technology. However, people go out there and they can take photos with a trash can and poke a hole through it and let that sit for hours to get an image. There are ways that we can do things and still create beautiful things. So just keep that in mind. If there is a product out there that you really want, really looking for, I would wait for it rather than rush in and buy something that's a replacement for it because you can't afford it. You might grow to resent or regret that later on. And that's all I got, guys. This was the first class of the month, Intro to Cameras. Intermediate class is next week. We may have had a technical difficulty because I didn't see anybody watching here, and typically I do. So I think really what happened here was something glitch. But the video should be available for you to watch so you can kind of update yourself on this. Again, we do this every Thursday from 5:30 to 7. Next week, guys, is the second Thursday of the month. So that is the intro or intermediate cameras. So intermediate cameras is going to be on September 11th, 9/11 will be the intermediate cameras. I will let you guys go because it looks like my video isn't showing up on your live. So this way you can at least watch the video if you needed to catch it today. My name is Saxon, everybody. I teach the camera classes here every Thursday from 5:30 to 7. Thank you guys for watching so much, and as always, keep shooting, and I'll see you next time.